listening to the Author Inside You podcast, a weekly podcast designed to motivate you to finish writing a book, choose a publisher, and have your work build an audience. Keep listening if you're looking to get propelled into the next chapter of your life. And now, it's the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.
Hello, and welcome to the Author Inside You podcast. I'm Matt Rafferty.
And I'm Leah Rafferty.
Joining us today is Kristen Hansen Brakeman, author of Is That the Shirt You're Wearing? A memoir and essays. Kristen is the mother of 3 daughters and is a humor writer that has been published in the Huffington Post and the Washington Post, along with LA Parent and Working Mother magazines. She's recently been named Humor Writer of the Month by Irma Bombeck's Writers Workshop. Welcome, Kristen. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Well, thank you for joining us. So, Kristen, Matt and I were watching your videos, and they are absolutely hilarious. Where did you get your humor from?
Well, I don't know. Maybe just being the youngest of 5, I think, it's hard to get a word in edgewise. And so a lot of times I started writing things instead. And my dad was pretty funny. He was always cracking wise, even though he was an engineer and kind of a...
Oh, really? Yeah, an engineer.
Smart guy.
A funny engineer, huh? That's
very
unique.
Sarcastic. So there was a lot of humor in the home. But
Great.
And also I grew up reading Irma Bombeck books. My mom always had them lying around the house. And,
Sure.
And I would read them. My sister would always say, they're written for 40-year-old women. Like, I don't care. They're funny.
Right, they were.
Well, my mom used to read them all the time, too.
Yeah.
So how did you end up writing a book?
Well, kind of long story. I set out, in my 20s to... I always liked writing essays, but I thought, well, maybe I'll try to write, sitcoms or movie scripts. And so, for many years I've been trying to do that, but it's a tough road to hoe. I mean, it's definitely hard to get your things published. So along the side, I kept writing the essays. And when my children got older, I started thinking, you know what, maybe I could write, maybe I could put the essays together into a book.
Great.
It took some time, but eventually I got enough where I felt like it would make a book. But I thought, when I read essay collections, sometimes there's essays that you relate to, like even Nora Ephron, she would write about cooking. And when I read her books, I would just kind of glaze over those because I don't really care about cooking too much. Yeah. So what I thought was important in an essay collection is to have like a through line. So what I did was I wrote the book, but I interspersed them with journal entries from one summer,
okay.
and then I ended up doing another summer two years later, and that kind of gives people like a reason to keep coming back, like, oh, what happened with her mom, that sort of thing.
Oh, great, Great idea.
Yeah. So
because everyone likes to know people's stories.
Yeah, and I found, what I found was interesting is that people, they like the humor, they like the stories, the essays, but I've more response actually from the journal entries in between, because what they are is like kind of a chronicle of like a summer. The first one is a summer home with my kids with sandwich generation theme.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with young children and then needing care because she's getting older and needs more assistance with things. But I found that people are more relating and that's resonating more than than the essays even.
Interesting.
Which has been interesting.
So you were writing the essays just for fun, and you weren't really doing...
Yeah, I was kind of writing them. I at one point I thought, well, maybe I could be a newspaper columnist. But pretty much about the time that I was thinking about that, I think like all the newspapers. You remember?
Voting,
I don't know when it was, 10 or 15 years ago, all these newspapers started going bankrupt all across the country.
Right.
So that was not good timing. So I thought maybe I'll put it together as a book. And actually I did the first summer, and I got about 30 or 40,000 words in, but then I realized that wasn't quite long enough to be a book. So that's why I decided to do a second summer. And in that summer, the themes are a little different. My mom's a few years older. My daughter's going off to college. So it's more about like life transitions, changing roles in the families.
When you were writing your book, did you just write, or were you concerned about the grammar and?
Well, I've always, like with the essays, I've always done them more as like self-contained pieces, and so I try to, do with a start and a middle and an end, and like I've never been a blog. I've never considered myself a blogger. I try to make the essays, not just have a point, but also, be written well.
Okay, good.
I don't know how else to say that. And luckily, my husband's pretty good at editing.
Oh, great.
He'll always go over things and edit them for me and give his feedback whether I want it or not. And then as far as the journal entries, I kind of wrote those more in diary style, and I just went ahead and wrote them. And then, then later on I went back and edited, and cut some things out when they were getting too long, that sort of stuff.
So I read an article earlier today that about you writing query letters. Can you tell us that story? Can you tell us?
Oh, yeah. So after I wrote the book, this was, I think I finished it about 4 years ago. I went ahead and started submitting it, and boy, it's not easy to sell a book, as probably everybody knows.
Yes, that's what we keep hearing.
Yeah, the hard thing, first of all, is most people say to go out and get a literary agent, and so I tried that first, and probably I think there's at least maybe sent hundreds of query letters to various literary agents. And you either get no response or you get kind of like, well, essay collections. The bottom line was essay collections are really hard to sell to publishers because they know that when they get to the bookstores, they don't really sell that well. So they're not eager to take you on, basically.
Yeah, that has to.
So it took me. It took me some time to really to have that really sink in, because you keep thinking, oh, well, maybe this agent will say something different.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So I kept trying, and finally, I don't know, one of them just said it the right way. They're like, you know what? When you write a real book, basically contact me again.
Wow.
I like your voice.
Wow.
She's like, I like your voice, but just essays, they're not the thing if you're not a household name. So, and I guess that makes sense. When you go to the bookstore, you see a book by Chelsea Handler or, a stand-up that you recognize, that makes more sense. You're going to be drawn to that book. So, but I didn't want to give up on it because I felt like, a lot of, readers, not just my friends, really like my writing. They, I hear from people all the time, and they have compared my writing to either Irma or Nora Ephron. Not identical, but in that vein.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I had something to add to the conversation, so I didn't want to give up on it. So that's when I switched gears and thought, well, I'll just try publishers directly. And so I started to submit to publishers, and that in itself was a little difficult too, because the big publishers you can't really submit to without an agent. So I was going for the small independent publishers, and a lot of them want like literary books, like poetry or short stories that are deep nonfiction about something very serious.
Okay, interesting.
And that's kind of the things they would want. So not many said, oh, you want a humor book. But so that kind of narrowed my choices. But I kept submitting, and after I think about 6 months or so, I found this very small press in Virginia, and she really liked the book, liked the voice, and said yes. So
great, congratulations! Woohoo!
I know.
He must have been like,
that is
I
so
did
cool.
And so then about a year and a half, so the book got published.
Congratulations. So was it hard working with them, or did it work out well?
Oh no, it worked out great. There wasn't like a lot of editing. I think maybe it would be a little different if you're with a big publisher and you go through like all their marketing and all that. But with a small publisher, it's pretty much here's what we're doing, and that's the way it is.
Yeah. So let's talk about marketing. So we found you because you were mentioned in a magazine. And what other marketing are you doing?
Well, the marketing has been basically I've done the lion's share of the marketing, and from what I understand from people that have gone with your Simon and Schuster or big places, they end up doing a lot of the marketing themselves anyway. So I don't know how different it is, but other than basically, I think, the publisher sent out the book for reviews to the big names and stuff. But other than that, I've been doing most of it. And I would just try to find anyone that I could. I went through book bloggers. I sent letters to them. Any kind of magazine, especially ones that have published me before, I would contact them.
Oh, good idea.
Like LA Parent, I had written for them a few times, so actually they're going to do a little feature on me in the next couple months or so. So that's nice.
So the writing gigs with the Huffington Post and the Washington Post, how did you get those?
For the Washington Post, I had written an essay about the writer's strike that was going on. This was a few years back. And I submitted it to their op-ed section, and they liked it and just called me up and said they wanted to run it. So that's how that happened. And then I think I wrote another piece for them about being addicted to Facebook. This was a few years later.
So it's just putting it out there, right?
Yeah, you just submit, and then they say yes or no. Huffington Post was a little different. I think I had written something about my hearing, because I have a slight hearing loss. So I had written something about that and submitted it to one of their editors, because they had different sections. And then the way it used to be with the Huffington Post is once you got in, you could pretty much get anything uploaded. Mm-hmm. They've changed their rules a little bit since then, but.
So do you write a lot?
Yeah, so I basically just submitted, and they say yay or nay.
Great.
Do you write a lot? Do you write every day?
No, I mean, I wish. I just because I also work and I have the 3 kids. It's sometimes I can write those at work. My boss doesn't necessarily know that always, but yeah. I'm able to do that, or maybe I think of an outline when I'm driving home. But as far as longer things, I like working on a script or some like editing the book. If I have time off from work, then maybe, 2 or 3 weeks at a time, then I'm able to really sit down and focus, during the day. But no, I wish I could write every day. I don't have the time.
Right.
And what about the videos? Are you using the videos to help promote your book?
The videos, the videos I just kind of did as a hoot, and I thought maybe they would help promote the book. And oh my gosh, when I did the toilet paper one first, in case anyone wants to log on to it, I did a thing about my kids not changing the toilet paper rule, and I put it up on the internet without telling my family. And oh gosh, my middle daughter came home and she looked at the video, my younger daughter showed it to her, and without saying a word, she went and got her suitcase and pretended to be packing.
So embarrassed, right?
She was so embarrassed. So, and then I've done a few more, and I think they're just ignoring me now. My kids they won't even comment on them.
Well, they're extremely funny. We like them.
No, thank you so much. Well, I hope people will click on them.
Good. Well, we'll put a link to our show notes.
So, Kristen, do you have any advice to other people who are out there writing maybe essays like this and thinking about maybe someday I could publish a book?
Yeah, I think my advice to any writer, but really is you have to do it because you love writing, and you can't do it thinking, oh gosh, I'm going to make $1 million. So you for most writers, you write because you love to write, and yeah, it's thrilling to see your name in print, and you can't be doing it thinking, oh, this is going to be my career necessarily. There's only so many Stephen Kings in the world. It's, those are the lucky few. So, if you want to write, you love doing it and do it. Do it more regularly than I do. And I think persistence is the key. I was not able to get my book published right away, but I just kept trying.
Well, congratulations. And then what's the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you?
Well, they can check my website at KristenBrakeman.com.
And purchase your book, too.
Purchase my book, first and foremost, please.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, thank you, Kristen, for spending time with us today. It's great hearing your story.
I appreciate it.
And thanks for making us laugh.
Thank you so much.
All right,
thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Author Inside You.
And we'd appreciate it if you tell your friends about our podcast.
Until next time.
Right on.
Thank you for listening to the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.